Hey guys, Kid here of Burn 1 with the Shadowverse Evolved channel, bringing you another deck profile for the set 3 meta, this time on Chess Rune. This is an archetype that I do believe has a lot of ways to express yourself in the deck build itself. So this is my take on Chess Rune, so let's get right into the deck profile itself. Alright, so this is the deck itself. I chose to go more of an aggressive route with a small Fable package here involving Agnus Tachon along with Rapunzel. And I'll kind of explain my thought process of why I chose to play these cards in this list instead of like playing more of a toolbox package for Merlin and things like that. So first things first is obviously we're playing here the actress. The reason I'm playing this card is because I want to play more of an aggressive style of Chess Rune where I'm playing a lot of followers over and over again to pressure the board that way. Some of our followers don't necessarily have really high powers and they're all threatening, but the power of being able to kind of just build a bunch of boards, a bunch of weenies that our opponent has to answer at some point, because we can just keep, swinging our guys in and keep going for face, makes it really hard for our opponent to deal with. So I want to be able to curve out very early with Actress here, along with other 1-drops. So like we always open very well on our turns like 1, 2, and 3, which I think this provides some extra assurance for that, along with creating a cool package with Rapunzel that helps with matchups that are aggressive and forces them to trade into our guys more often and protect some of our smaller guys. Next, we have Magic Rook here. It's another 1-drop 2/2. This is just the goblin version here of chess. But if you have a magical pawn in your EX here, which is incredibly easy to do, this becomes a 2/3 with ward. This is one of our only wards in the deck, so this is the only way we can really stop people from swinging in our face against like Forte and things like that. So you have to be very careful about how you spin out your rooks. Obviously, if you have one on turn 1, you just want to play it on there just to start building some tempo, but later in the game, you got to be careful and use your rooks in a way that you can get maximum value out of the ward when needed. Next, Blitz. This is one of the payoff cards for the set. So this is a 1-drop spell that selects an enemy far on the field and deal it X damage, where X is equal to the number of magical pawns on your field plus 2. So worst case scenario, this is a pay 1 snipe that isn't quick speed, but as soon as you start playing a bunch of pawns to the board, which happens naturally as you keep playing cards, since other cards will spawn pawns to your board automatically or spawn pawns into your EX zone, which you can push up later. This card, it can easily just remove 5-drop followers for 1 cost, essentially. More like you're paying a little bit extra though, obviously, to get there. So sometimes you'll have to play other followers, which you'll naturally be playing anyway, or push up some pawns from the EX zone to remove things. But this is a good way to like finish curving out your turn, get through wards, and then push your pawns through to do damage along with your knight and rook and so forth. Playing 3 insights. This is just basically we're making our deck thinner this way, and why wouldn't you play insight just to have more consistency with your deck? You're essentially playing a 37 card deck with insight. Magical strategy. This was from actually set 2, I believe. This is a spell card that will generate a magical pawn onto the board. It's a 2/1, so you can basically see this is a 1-drop 2/1. What's really cool though is because it's a spell, it works very well with Agnus Tachon here. If you remember from the Uma meta, this card is insane. It's a 2-drop 2/2, and then whenever you play a spell, select an enemy far on the field and give it -1/-1, which means every time you use a magical strategy to summon a pawn, you're also basically hitting something with -1/-1. What's also good about this card is the Evo form, which is insane, is on Evo, select a spell in your cemetery and add it to your hand, and it still has the -1/-1 effect when you play a spell. So this is how you can get more advantage back by recycling some of your removal spells or your magical strategies. And one of the big payoff cards also later, which is Check, is another spell that you can recycle very often, and it just punishes your opponent really bad. Agnus Tachon is just a really powerful card that helps throughout the entire game and helps build more resources for you, so you can just keep slamming pawns and stuff like that onto the board to be as aggressive as possible while also clearing things away. Next, Magical Bishop. This is a 2-drop 1/2. The stats aren't amazing, but it kind of reads as if you have like one damage storm plus heal every turn. So this is a fanfare. Put a magical pawn token into your EX area, and then at the start of your end phase, if there's another chess flower on the field, you deal 1 damage to your enemy leader and give your leader 1 health. Later in this game, this does get pulled out by your mystical king, so your mystical king can do extra damage through that way while like healing you just a little bit, and hopefully that's enough to survive and you can push for game after that Mystical King turn. Next, Magical Knight here. This is like one of our big attacker cards here. It's a 3-drop 3/3 that evos for 1, and then whenever another chest flower is put onto the field, it gets +1 attack. We play 2 of the Evo form here, which it becomes a 4/4, but on Evo, it summons a magical pawn token to your field, so it immediately becomes a 5/4. And then obviously, since you Evo, you can rush. But otherwise, if you start pushing out a bunch of pawns, this will just build up a bunch of attack all of a sudden. You can swing in from anywhere from like 7 damage or more sometimes, depending on how things run out for you. Merlin, such a strong staple in Rune. We'll be seeing this card forever, basically. This is another way where we can search out some of our key pieces for like check or magical strategy, things like that, to pull out of our deck and just like play them, or even the Demonic Strike package as always, which essentially means we get extra burn damage through Merlin in the later game to just kind of close out games where they've destroyed our board, but they're just about to lose the game. They're within 6 damage. Merlin's the way we go. So obviously Merlin on play, you search your deck for a spell, reveal it, and add it to your hand. And then we play 2 of the Evo. On Evo, select the spell that costs 3 points or less in your cemetery and play it for 0 play points. A lot of big targets here is obviously Check and Demonic Strike are 2 of the best targets you could be picking. All right, Rapunzel. So the reason we're playing this card, or I've decided to play this card along with the actress, is because the aggressive game plans of some of the decks like Sword kind of get blown up by Rapunzel because it's an overstated 3-drop. Occasionally we can attack with this card too, but we're always playing a lot of followers that we kind of want to protect throughout the game that are very weak to like being traded into by other followers. So playing a Rapunzel in front of those followers makes it a little bit harder for our opponent to like interact with our life total along with our board if they have to trade followers in first. Means that our pawns will have a better chance of getting through and doing extra damage, along with our Magical Knight being protected so that it gets a full turn cycle, so we can start swinging in with the Magical Knight once we pump it up like crazy. I really like this card during this meta. I really think Rapunzel is a very strong 3-drop war that just like negates a lot of the aggressive game plans out there, unless they have like the exact answer to deal with one card. I mean, I feel like it's pretty obvious. I've been playing Rapunzel in almost all of my decks already, so I think that kind of shows how strong I think Rapunzel is. Check is another big payoff card for this, and like recycling this with Merlin is really good too, because it generates a card back to your hand, so you can get more hand advantage that way. So this is a 3-drop spell where you select an enemy far on the field, you deal 4 damage to it, then you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and you may reveal a chest card with a different name from this card from among them and add it to your hand, then put the remaining cards on the bottom of your deck in any order. This is how we'll end up finding other key pieces. We can dig for our Mystical Kings to set up for our later turns, things like that. It's just very easy hand advantage because most of our cards in the deck are chest traded. And this is one of the ways we can just like keep up with our hand advantage, because we do end up spending a lot of our resources just pushing as much out as we can, because our big payoff later in the game is that essentially 1 card rebuilds our entire board for free. Demonic Strike, one of this is how we kind of add extra reach because we're playing Merlin. Why not? It can act as removal occasionally, but honestly you kind of want to just use it to go face most of the time for those turns where you're like, oh, my opponent's kind of chilling at 6 or 7 life total. Well, I can Merlin Evo, pop them with Demonic Strike twice, and just kind of set up things like that. It's just a solid card overall. Next, Milady Mystic Queen. This is another solid card all around. It's a 4-drop 2/2, which doesn't seem very powerful, but it has fanfare. You summon a magical pawn token, and then you put a magical pawn token into your EX area. So this is how we get more 2/1s onto the board. We just build so much through like little cheesy followers. If you're like kind of familiar with like humans and MTG, it's kind of the same game plan, I guess, or white weenies, I should say, where we're just playing a bunch of little guys constantly and pushing face, pushing damage as much as we can, forcing them to deal with it so that they don't really go for our face first, and they have to try to out resource us. But since all our cards generate an extra resource on play or through some other effect, sometimes our opponent just can't actually out resource us, and they have to like start playing a game of going face back and forth and racing us. This is a way we can build more advantage that way through getting free magical pawns. The Evo form, where Evos for 1 is select an enemy flower on the field until it X damage, where X is equal to the number of chest flowers on your field. So a lot of times, worst case scenario, If you evo this with only playing itself, it at least does 2 damage, but a lot of times you'll easily be able to build a pretty wide board of 4 to 5 followers, especially playing Mystic Queen out and then evoing it, which means it's usually going to do 4 to 5 damage on something to remove a lot of things. And right now, the sweet spot in this meta is if you hit for 5, you can remove most things other than like the huge payoff cards that some classes have, like kind of like what is Beauty and the Beast and other big cards like that. Mystic King is the big payoff for the deck. It's a 6-drop 5/5, which at first doesn't look too great, but then you read the effect. It does evolve for 2, which means this is most often going to be a 7 or 8 turn play, depending if you have an evo point or not. Its first effect is put another chest follower from your field into its owner's cemetery. Select an enemy follower on the field and deal it 5 damage for the rest of this turn. This activated ability, except for evolve, can't be activated. So this is a way we can swing in with our pawns, then remove our pawns off the board to make room to deal 5 damage to an enemy follower to get through things that way. But also the big payoff for Mystic King here is that on Evo, you select up to 4 chest followers with different names that cost 4 play points or less in your cemetery and put them onto the field, which means you're going to be getting back Mystic Queen, Mystical Knight, Magical Bishop, and Magical Rook is generally the board you end up building. For 1 card, you suddenly have a 5-card board, and Mystic King itself is a 6/6, which puts it out of range of a lot of things that usually trade for 1 card. Like I said, the big number here is 5 damage. If you're above 5 health, it's a little bit harder to remove. So you can build this really big, wide board, and then all of the cards that you played are very powerful when they all get summoned. Once again, the following turn, when you play, you can evo Mystic Queen to remove something. Magical Knight is going to get a bunch of pumps when it gets summoned out from Mystical King. And that just presents a lot of like raw power on the board. So on a turn of doing Mystic King, if they can't answer the board, you've usually won the game right after that, and you've basically put them in checkmate. So that's kind of like the whole deck. It's a really, really straightforward deck, honestly. Like I said, this deck though has ways to express yourself differently on the deck build itself. So if you don't like this whole Rapunzel Fable package here I included to be like a little bit more aggressive while also shoring up your defensive strategy, essentially, you can just take that out and put in more spells of whatever you like, you think that will work best in your meta. I just felt more comfortable playing a package like this because it felt very aggro, and I want my opponent to have answers to my followers instead of me answering them, because if I have to start answering them, I feel like this deck starts to like fall apart in that sense, because we really want to be able to have the big payoff after pushing some damage through and like getting them down to like 10 life total. We get a turn with Mystic King Evo and set up a board that like they have to answer with something, otherwise they kind of lose the game on the spot. Well, with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. I know this isn't the most spiciest list ever. I'm leaving the spicy chess list to Dean because I know he's been brewing a lot and loves this whole deck archetype. So once he's back from Japan, I'm sure he'll have a really spicy deck for you guys to take a look at. But until then, I hope you try this out and see if you like the whole chess archetype. With that being said, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Later, everyone.